Over the past 10 years, I've made a lot of videos in which I make suggestions about how infrastructure could be changed. But I hardly ever go back and update you on whether those changes have happened or not. So to make up for it, in this video I'm going to update you on a bunch of suggestions I made over the past decade. In my May 2012 video about the Eglinton and Allen intersection, I said, to further encourage cycling, the city could build separated bicycle lanes along Eglinton Avenue. With a light rail line being built under Eglinton Avenue, it is now an excellent opportunity to redesign the street in order to favor more sustainable transportation. And it turns out that the City of Toronto agrees. In 2012, the city created the Eglinton Connects Plan, which is a pretty comprehensive planning initiative which, among other things, includes redesigning Eglinton Avenue, including separated bicycle lanes, or cycle tracks. And as part of the Eglinton Crosstown LRT, many of the portions of Eglinton Avenue had to be ripped up. And then rather than reinstating the road layout which previously existed, those sections are being reinstated as per the Eglinton Connects Plan, including separated bicycle lanes. But the problem now is that there's a bunch of missing gaps between the sections which were torn up for the LRT construction, because most of the central segment of the line was built with a tunnel boring machine, so there was actually no impact on the surface. In 2017, the city created the Eglinton Connects Streetscape Preliminary Design. This design was based around a full reconstruction of the street, which totally reimagined how the road space was distributed. But the problem with that plan is, that you need to reconstruct the entire street, which will take quite a long time. So in 2020, City Council directed staff to accelerate the implementation of the changes, so in 2022, the Eglinton Today project was created. This will implement separated bicycle lanes using temporary materials, such as planters, paint, and bollards, in the meantime until the road is reconstructed. That project is currently in the public consultation phase, and implementation is planned for 2023. I'll put a link in the description in case you're interested in participating in the public consultation. In my September 2016 video on the Richmond-Adelaide bicycle lanes, I said, the eastbound bicycle route includes a left turn from Bathurst Street onto Adelaide Street, but there's no provision for making this turn. The left lane has streetcar tracks, which makes it a very dangerous option for turning left. Most people instead do a two-stage turn by crossing during the all-way pedestrian crossing phase. But there is no waiting area for cyclists turning left, and no bicycle signal for them to obey. There is also no crossing button within reach of the bicycle lane, so unless a pedestrian shows up, the light will never change. A year after my video, in 2017, the intersection was reconstructed to facilitate those turning movements, and all of those missing elements were added. There's now a waiting area for turning cyclists, both left turning and right turning. There are bicycle signal heads, and there is now a button to allow cyclists to activate that signal phase. In my October 2016 video on pedestrian buttons, I explained why some buttons call the walk signal, while others don't, and I asked, so how do you know which buttons bring up the walk light, and which ones are only there for APS? Unfortunately, in the City of Toronto, there's no way of telling. I then suggested that the myth of the placebo pedestrian buttons could be dispelled by actually labeling which buttons you need to press to get a walk light, and which ones you don't. 2 years later, in 2018, the City of Toronto did start installing different signs on the pedestrian buttons, depending on whether you actually need to press them or not. Buttons you do need to press to get a walk light have the same white sign as before. But buttons you don't need to press to get a walk light now have a blue sign with an icon of a speaker, and the message reading, "Button for audible signal only." In my March 2017 video on York University GO Station, I basically outlined how that station was terrible and useless, and just a waste of time for people traveling along the Barrie GO train line. I ended the video with, the station's days are numbered, because at the end of 2017, Downsview Park GO Station will open, which is connected to the Line 1 subway extension to York University and beyond. Since the new subway line will take about the same time as the current shuttle bus, it wouldn't make sense to keep both stations operating. At the time, GO's plan was indeed to close the station at the end of December 2017, but based on opposition from the people who were actually using York University Station, GO ended up making a compromise with the city councillor. On the 30th of December 2017, Downsview Park GO station opened, conveniently connecting the GO train to York University via the Line 1 subway. York University Station remained open, but it would no longer be served outside of rush hour. It was only served by 8 trains per direction, in the peak direction only. On the 18th of March 2020, GO implemented massive cutbacks in service in response to lockdowns and massively reduced ridership related to the coronavirus pandemic. As part of these changes, York University Station was temporarily closed, the rationale being that the campus itself was also closed. But on the 19th of July 2021, GO announced that the temporary closure would actually be permanent, and the station would be demolished to make way for a new freight siding. The station was demolished in April 2022. The new freight siding will reduce the impact that CN freight trains have on GO trains while they're picking up or dropping off cargo at the nearby petrochemical facility. Although York University Station is now thankfully gone, the conditions which allowed it to survive for so long are still around. The reason that riders were fighting to keep the station open was that the cost of the shuttle bus between York University GO station and York University were fully paid for by the university, whereas the cost of riding the TTC subway 2 stops from Downsview Park to York University are fully paid by the riders. In 2018, the Government of Ontario improved the situation somewhat by introducing a 50% discount on TTC tickets for passengers transferring to or from GO Transit. This cut the cost of the 2-stop subway trip from $3 to a much more reasonable $1.50. It also did the same for people traveling between York University and the GO bus terminal at Highway 407 station, as well as for people making countless other useful connections across the city. But in the provincial election later in 2018, the government was replaced by a new Conservative government led by Doug Ford. In January 2020, they announced that the discount program would be eliminated, which means that GO Transit passengers who need to take a short trip on the TTC to reach their final destination are once again faced with an unreasonably expensive ticket to cover the last few kilometers to their destination. Instead, the Ford government has introduced discounts for car ownership, such as eliminating the fees for renewing license plates. In my July 2020 video on the temporary bicycle share system in the Maastunnel in Rotterdam, I said, "The main problem I see is that the bicycles are stored at ground level, requiring pedestrians to then take them down the escalator." A week later, the bicycles were actually moved downstairs, so people no longer needed to take them up and down the escalator. The bicycle share system itself no longer exists, because on the 17th of October 2020, the pedestrian tunnel reopened, eliminating the need for pedestrians to use the bicycle tunnel at all. Although many of the suggestions I've made in videos have subsequently been implemented in real life, I don't think that my videos themselves are the reason that the changes happened. In most cases, I'm sure that many other people were making the same suggestions, and it was the combined effect of all those voices which actually inspired a change. But the one possible exception is the city's decision to start labeling the 2 different types of pedestrian buttons. Because exactly 1 month after my video came out, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation posted a suspiciously similar video in which they interviewed City of Toronto Transportation Services staff about why some of the buttons don't actually change the lights. I'm guessing that the CBC's interview was actually what convinced the city to start labeling the buttons. But I'm also pretty sure that my video is what brought the confusing pedestrian buttons to the CBC's attention. It's a small win, but I'll take it.